Hello, hello, hello. My name's Sam, otherwise known as Function. I'm very pleased to be joined today by another caster by the name of TheDuelist. I would expect that most of the people watching this video will already know him, so I will let him introduce himself as well.
Hey guys, welcome to the channel. If you're not subscribed to Function or Sam, you definitely should. But yeah, I'm really happy to be here today as kind of a supporting caster here.
Cool, thanks for joining me, man. Right, we are on a map generator, 10k map. Let's take a look at Team 1. In Purple Aeon, we've got No Fear, 555. In Orange Aeon, we've got Zwaffle Noob. Grey Seraphim, we have Macro Noob. And Razy Noob, bringing up the rear with Blue Seraphim.
And for Team 2, down at the southern side of the map, we'll start off with Sneed on the north and then make our way south. In white, we have Sneed playing as the UEF. Moving to the south in the central forward position, we have Blast Shield, who is going as the Aeon. And in the rear guard air position, we have Swackle, who's going UEF. Interesting choice, I think, for air. I feel like UEF air is kind of lackluster. And then lastly but not least, we have Harzer Noob in the bottom corner, who's going to be playing the southernmost front line. He's going as Cybran for team number 2.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I definitely agree about UEF in air position. They're not known for their air, but we'll see what Swackle can get done. On Team 1, I've noticed 2 Aeon and 2 Seraphim. Aeon are a pretty underused faction at the minute. They're not the strongest.
There's a reason for that, though.
Yeah.
Aeon sucks.
Yeah, I would have to agree, unfortunately. They are in dire need of some buffs, I think.
There we go. See, I've got another caster who is willing to agree with me in the hate against the Aeon.
Yeah, they're just a little bit weak. I think in 1v1, certainly at the rating that I play at, they can be really strong because you can micro the Aurora really effectively in and out of range. But most of the time, they're just better off going with one of the other factions, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that's if you have the attention span to be able to micro them. I definitely don't, or the actions per minute. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
Yeah,
I think.
And I stay away from APM heavy tactics as well. So let's take a look at the map. I absolutely love the map generator that we have access to with the FaF client. It's really good. But yeah, we've got a central land zone. The players start on a very slightly raised section, and then 2 ponds on either side.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like if you rotate settings 90 degrees and then make the land bridge in the middle a lot wider and add a little bit of terrain.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
I'm curious to see how the players, or if they will, use the ponds to the north and the south.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we do have both a UEF on the north, so tactical missiles available to the UEF cruisers. Yeah. And then we also have a Seraphim on the north for team number 1. So cruisers, TML cruisers able to be accessed by both teams. So we'll see if we see any of that.
Yeah, certainly both of these side bases are very much in range of cruiser fire. Seen a couple of bombers coming out from Team 2. I think Blast Shield had one, Swackle had one, but they've gone down now. I'm not sure they got too much done. Speaking of Navy, we've got Razy Noob on the northern pond, taking his commander forward nice and early and getting a Navy factory. Little land engagement over on the bottom left here. Hazer Noob bringing his Mantis against the Flares, if I remember that correctly, yeah. From Zwaffle Noob.
The early T2 upgrades for both the middle players are going to be pretty important as they're securing kind of the middle. There is a good amount of reclaim in the middle. Not like, an obscene amount, but definitely not something that you would want to leave for the other team.
Yeah. Yeah, they'll definitely get an advantage if you can hoover up most of that. Swackle being very kind and assisting Blast Shield on his sensor upgrade.
I'm curious where Blast Shield got his name. One of the shows that I used to watch a lot whenever I was younger was Chopped, and they always talk about the blast chiller to freeze things really, really quickly. So I'm curious if that's where he got his name, and if he's going to be icy cold in this game, or if he's going to be warm and fuzzy to all of his teammates.
Yeah, we'll have to see. There's some pretty good names in the FaF community, I feel.
But yeah, I think Team One up at the north is just an oxymoron in and of itself, because we have No Fear, who knows fear, but also has no fear. But he's the leader of the noob team, so
yeah,
I feel like that's kind of an oxymoron.
I wonder if those three guys with a noob in their name are all part of a clan or on comms or something.
Well, if they are, then Harzer Noob is the traitor down on the southern side.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that. Yeah, cool.
There's an aggressive movement though from Resi Noob against Sneed up on the northern side, so kind of mirroring the actions that Harzer Noob took a couple minutes ago against Zwaffle.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be confused with Swackle. That's going to get annoying.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, Sneed has realised that he's at an early disadvantage in the sort of on the shoreline here in terms of navy. So he's airdropped 3 engineers over right in the top right corner to build a couple navy factories. So he's going to make a play for the pond. Meanwhile, he's got his commander right up in the face of the enemy, and he's actually reclaiming one of Resi Noob's navy factories.
I was going to say big brain plays there, dropping engineers in the northern corner where hopefully Resi Noob won't be able to see it, and he does not have any radar read or anything of what's going on in that northern corner.
Yeah.
And then using his commander to, it'd probably be better if he didn't reclaim it, if he instead just attacked it.
Yeah, it's going
He's
down.
reclaiming that awfully slowly.
Yeah, normally reclaiming tends to be quicker than that, I feel. I don't know why that's going so slowly, but... and we saw a couple of tactical missile launches being launched. Yeah, so Blast Shield taking advantage of that early T2 engineering suite in his comm. He's firing tactical missiles at Zwaffle Noob, and he took out a T2 mechs over in the Zwaffle's starting location. A couple more being fired. A volcano has gone up. So that second mechs will be protected, but a really nice play there. Getting early TMLs, I think, is really useful because late into the game there's missile defense just littering the map, but in the first few minutes it's not so much.
I think TMD, actually, I'm not, what rating do you actually play at? I'm just curious, because that'll be how I phrase this statement.
I'm oscillating between sort of 900 to 1,000 on the 1v1 rating.
Okay, so you and I are very similarly rated. I always forget TMD. That is...
Yeah, same.
And I always find myself, microing my army at the front line and then going back to my base and realizing that all my core mexes have been destroyed by some TML that I didn't see, because I also don't scout, and I forget radar usually too, so...
Yeah, it's super frustrating.
No idea how I'm 1,000 rated at all. But.
Yeah, I'm one of the things I'm trying to work on is at the minute is I'm really bad at keeping up pressure. So I find I get into these spots where I'm trying to pump out defensive armies and trying to balance my econ and stuff, and then I find the other person is just raiding every section of my territory, and I just can't keep up. And then
you're talking about keeping up pressure and raiding. You can see Harzer not letting up with the pressure on the bottom side of the map up against Zwaffle.
Oh yeah,
he's got another raid going on that little peripheral base.
Yeah, very nice. Zwaffle actually having to bring his commander into that forward pond. I think you can get the commander out through this little sort of, what would you call that, like a bottleneck in the where that bay goes out into the sea.
Inlet. Straits of Gibraltar. I don't
Yeah.
know. I guess that would make that little cove the Mediterranean. So
Yeah.
the northern Mediterranean, the southern Mediterranean.
Yeah. Sneed's making use of ghetto gunships, which is quite cool. I've seen a couple of those. Those mech marines loaded into a T1 transport ship. The mech marines can actually fire onto land and sea units. So it's a very cheap way of getting a nice early gunship. Just trying to use that to harass Resinoob and his navy factories.
There was a game I watched a while back where a player just full committed to ghetto gunships. He had Continentals loaded with mech marines and was just swarming the enemy team.
Yeah, it's. I think so. I recently started playing FaF again in the last year or so, and before that, I played like 2 or 3 years ago. And I feel like ghetto gunships were just all over the place when I played ages ago, but I haven't seen any when I've started playing recently. Blast Shield actually just moved his commander up and reclaimed a T2 point defense from Macro Noob. And he built an Oblivion, that Aeon T2 point defense of his own. He's definitely using the commanders aggressively, which is really nice to see.
Confirmed. He's playing Ice Cold.
Yeah.
I think in the northern pond, though, Sneed's making some progress with that hidden naval factory base against Resi.
Yeah, really nice. I wonder if he's got an economy advantage or something. No, he's about the same economy, so I'm not completely sure how he's managed to pump out so many more frigates than his opponent there. Maybe Resinoob focusing on other things. He's building up quite a lot of T2 mexes and associated power storage at the minute. That takes quite a lot of mass.
I think that Resi does have slightly. I think he has a couple more ringed or fully capped T2 mexes than Sneed. So Sneed prioritizing a little bit more of the early aggression than the later game economy.
Yeah, I think Resinoob decided that he had won that top pond and there was nothing Sneed could do about it, so he kind of took his foot off the gas a bit, and Sneed punished him for it.
Importance of scouting.
Yeah, absolutely. That's another thing I'm terrible at. I'm okay at putting radars down, but I'm really bad at scouting out parts that I don't have radar for.
I bang the drum on scouting all the time, and I'm one of the worst.
Yeah.
Actually, scouting. It's become a meme on my channel, I feel like.
Yeah, I just casted an hour-long game on a 1v1 game where one player is really far ahead, and then just because he didn't scout the other guy's nuke launcher, he was, I don't know, maybe 5 seconds too late on building his nuke defense, and lost the game.
Oof.
Yeah, and
I do want to talk about the air players. So looking at Swackle's progression in contrast to No Fear's progression. No Fear, they're both at T3, but No Fear's already got that T3 P-Gen, which is critical for making T3 production, and is working on a strat right now that I think about to come out of the factory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Swackle going for the ASFs first. No ASFs.
Does have an ASF out right there in the middle next to his commander.
Yeah, no ASFs on the map for No Fear. So, and he's about to scout this this strat bomber. So it's been pinged. So if he's got the micro, then he may be able to kill that strat bomber before it does too much damage.
Right now he's just spam clicking it around, but ASF getting in range.
Yeah, they're so quick as well, those ASFs.
Yeah.
It goes down. It's a lot of mass going into that bomber. It's 1600 mass. So it's about 10 T2 tanks, I think, roughly.
I think it's more for the actual bomber to be constructed.
Yeah, I think you get about 85% of the mass in the wreck. And then really nice drop here from Sneed. He's dropped about a dozen Lobos in the back. The transport's going to go down, but not before those Lobos get dropped out. See what they can get done there. Drop perfectly in range of a bunch of T2 mass extractors. At least one of them is going to go down. There it goes. So that's a really nice play because those drops take relatively little APM to set up. They take quite a lot of APM to counter. Yeah, those Lobos just going right into the back, taking out Macro Noob's mexes at the back there. He's got bombers coming overhead. One more T2 mex goes down. And those Lobos definitely paid for themselves, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Taking out, I think that was 3 and potentially a 4th could go down. I think that far northern one.
Yeah, it's very close, isn't it? One or two, I think possibly one more volley would have killed that mix. But we've got our first cruiser out from Sneed, firing away. And
yeah, so we do have TML cruisers coming out from Sneed, and then down at the bottom, if you look at Harzer, he's also looking to make the jump to T2 Navy as well. Doesn't have TML, but Siren cruisers do have good range.
Yeah,
pretty good damage with their direct fire cannons.
Yeah, he might struggle to fire over these cliffs though. They're a little bit steep. Might have to keep the micro going to get a good firing solution. And Zoffelnoob has just airlifted his commander out of the water.
I did love the angle you got on that. It looked like the transport was just kind of vacuuming the commander out of the water.
Yeah,
it was great.
I didn't notice that until he was getting tractor beamed up. It was quite cool.
Beat me up, Scotty.
Yeah.
Looks like we got another drop coming in on
Sparkies this time. That's a cool unit. Don't see a lot of those. Point defense going down in defense, but the Sparky's able to build and shoot at the same time, which is really cool. The UEF have access to that completely unique unit. They've built their first point defense, second one going up. Those guys will actually do quite a lot of work. A factory going up now. He's mixed in a single T1 engineer that gives him access to the factory, although a couple of bombers come in overhead. Almost take out all of those engineers. Yeah, this is what I'm talking about. Keeping up the pressure on the enemy is just so valuable. You've got all of these bombers that are being produced and microed just to defend sort of basically your core mass. It's not a super comfortable position to be in.
Yeah, and if you take a look at the rest of the map is getting smaller for Team 1.
Mm-hmm.
Team 2 do have control of kind of both of their starting expansions, with Sneed grabbing the 3 mexes right at the base of his cliff,
Yep.
and Harzer grabbing the 2 in front, and a nice little fire base coming out from Blast in the center.
Yeah. Now that Harzer is bringing out cruisers, those sirens, this triple expansion here is just it basically doesn't exist for Team 1 anymore. There's just no viable way of maintaining control of that, to be honest.
And that is starting to translate into something of a significant eco lead, with Team 2, I think, nabbing about 480 mass per tick, and Team 1 looking more on the 433, 430 kind of side. So,
yeah. Total mass is still pretty even, but over the next few minutes, I'd expect that gap to widen. Yeah, you can see Swaffle having to divert vital mass, power, and APM into building shields and that sort of thing now.
And I guess we answered that question of, are the cliffs too steep? The answer appears to be no.
Yes, some of the shots going into the cliff, some of them not. I think there's 2 different guns on the Siren, and one of them's firing.
There are.
Okay.
So the Siren is unique in that both its anti-aircraft weapon and its deck gun can fire at land-based units.
Oh, I see.
So whenever there's no air units above the Siren, the anti-aircraft weapon will fire missiles.
Gotcha.
In albeit very inaccurate patterns against land units, but the deck gun is actually equivalent to the Salem, roughly. It's a little bit worse. I think it's like 10 DPS worse, but it's the best cruiser deck gun in the game.
Wow, cool. Yeah, and he's identified the problem that he was having, so he's moved those sirens back a little bit, out of range, I think, of the smaller guns, but the deck gun's now able to get a nice firing solution. He's taken out, I think that was a shield generator. It's not really a sustainable position for Zwaffelnoob.
Yeah, he's having to put a lot of mass into shields as well as torpedo bombers to
Nice.
defend that position.
Big flock of torp bombers coming in. Should be enough to one-shot one of those sirens, I think. Yeah, just about. Interceptors in the area, but no ASFs nearby. Swackle bringing those over now. Over on
I was
the
actually
northern
just
side.
looking at ASF count.
Mm-hmm.
Looks like Swackle does have a slight advantage in terms of ASF count, but again, No Fear did spend that initial time with the T3 Air Factory to go for that strat.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not getting anything done with it. It was a risk and it didn't pay off.
Yeah. We do also have Sneed going into Tech 3 Air as well.
Oh yeah, very nice. Just building an engineer at the minute. No T3 power. So I guess he's going to focus on that first.
And I don't see a supporting... Actually, we do have Zwaffle Noob going into Tech 3 Air as well, so...
Nice. Yeah,
Lots of players getting into the Tech 3 Air game.
Yeah, not a lot of land units coming out for Team 1 at all, really. So focusing on the economy, the air, and most of all shields, I think, at the minute.
I think Team 1 has kind of written off the middle, so to speak.
Yeah.
They've got a couple of skirmishing forces, like there's a handful of Ilshivas out from Macro Noob and a handful of tanks and artillery from Resi up in the north. But I think that both teams, and Team 2 is kind of in this same boat where it's kind of pointless to push this massive fire base that Macro Noob has set up in that little causeway to get into the base. So I think both teams going for a little bit more standoff tactics or naval tactics to try and win instead of throwing their heads against the wall.
Yeah, and that's to be expected really on a map like this where there's where it's a little bit sort of closed off. There are only a few routes to get to the enemy base. There's not much in the way of raiding parties that are going to come through, except those drops that came across from Sneed. And it's much easier to build a fire base than it is to attack one.
That is true. Sneed does have a T1 land factory up at the very northern part of the map as well, so he does have at least some foothold on the opposing team's side of the map.
Yeah, and it'll be fairly difficult for Team 1 to reliably attack that, although his governors are a little bit far away, so T1 bombers will maybe be able to take that out once it gets noticed. They have radar, so they know it's there.
And then as far as experimental production, it's looking like we got a GC from Blast, we got a Fat Boy from Sneed, and from Team 1...
Chicken from Macronoob, about 60% complete.
And one coming off the line from Resi, actually.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Closer to 90%.
Nice. The chicken is, I think, one of my favorite experimentals. I'm not sure about like how good it is because I mostly play 1v1s. I don't build a lot of experimentals, but in terms of aesthetics and the guns and stuff, it looks really cool. There we go.
So you're an aesthetic player?
I mean, I like the opportunity to cast and make videos like this because I can focus on the aesthetics. When I play, I'm just too stressed to think about how things look.
That's very true. There is a there is something that goes into the way that whenever we see things, how we're more attracted to them, regardless of whether they're better.
Yeah.
I play electric guitar, and
Okay.
I will almost always prefer a guitar that I like the look of over one that sounds better. So
Yeah, that's fair.
definitely a thing. Chicken from Resi though, pushing up through the middle.
Yeah, and he looks like he's not going to wait for Macronoob to finish his. Macro finishes his now, but that first chicken from Resi charging straight ahead. GC finished for Blast Shield. Let's take a look at the Fat Boy coming on to 90% complete.
I mean, I think a Fat Boy in a defensive stance is kind of like your ultimate experimental because you can just
Yeah.
run away.
Yeah, the Fat Boys are really cool. Well, aesthetically they're not. They look a bit gross and weird, but in terms of their usefulness, they're fantastic.
So be careful. You're fat shaming right now. You can't do that in today's day and age.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's just a bit flat. I don't know.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's like a summit. Somebody ironed a summit.
yeah, yeah, with those big cannons. They kind of jam two summits together almost and flatten them down. I like it. A couple of broadswords out for Swackle. One of them goes down to ASFs from No Fear. Megalith started for Harzanoob. Megalith, I think in terms of high level play, I think the Megalith is the most effective land experimental. Very long range, high alpha damage, very high HP. If you micro,
I think I would agree with that.
Yeah.
One thing I'm noticing out of both teams right now is a distinct lack of Omni.
Oh. Yeah,
And I think that the reason why Swackle just lost several of his broadswords there is didn't have Omni, didn't see No Fear's ASFs coming in, and wasn't able to react quickly enough with his own. And I think he's going to pay the price here again on the chicken that's going into the water, depending on how No Fear plays this out.
That was a really nice use of the chicken there. Decided that he can't safely attack the central landmass for Team 2, so he's taken it over, and he's taken out two governors as cruise ships. Zooey spam coming out now for Resinoob. Not a bad decision, to be honest. Zooey's, of course, floating T1 mobile arty can be pretty effective against naval units, which quite often stay stationary.
It's like the ultimate most annoying thing to do is because then you're used to just like sending your navy out there and letting it sit still unless
Yeah,
you're
exactly.
actively like in a naval engagement, and then Zooey's can just kind of annihilate units.
Yeah. I hate playing. I don't like playing against Seraphim, and I don't like navy maps. So when you're on a navy map against a Seraphim player, they just build a few T1 land factories, start an infinite queue of Zooeys, and put a waypoint into the middle of one of your expansions, and you're constantly having to use APM to fight it. Really frustrating.
It's a secret third resource in any real-time strategy game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I try to talk a lot on my casts about APMs and how you spend them. I'm just terrible at it, but from a sort of retrospective view, looking at casually watching someone else's gameplay, it's very easy to criticize.
Check out Resinoob's base.
What about
He's
it?
got... That is a nuke, my good man.
Oh yeah, look at that. I thought it was just another power generator. Fantastic. Do we have
That is
any...
not.
Has that been scouted? It's not been scouted. There are scouts in the area, but they're not quite flying over. And I mean, if you had Omni, you might notice that there's a whole bunch of T1 engineers or a whole bunch of land units surrounding a central structure, and you could guess what it is. You can certainly direct a scout over the top.
Yeah, he might also think though it's just another chicken, because there is a chicken out, so
yeah,
it definitely needs just a full intel sweep.
yeah, definitely. No nuke defense that I can see for Team 2. Oh no, I'm wrong. Sneed has one on the northern side there. Nothing loaded into it yet. And all those broadswords in jeopardy now for Swackle. ASF's come across there to screen.
I might be wrong, but I feel like Swackle has lost like 7 or 8 broadswords just because his ASFs are not in the right spot at the right time.
Yeah, it's interesting. So I don't know how you play, but when I have gunships or bombers, what I tend to do is just set all of the interceptors or ASFs on set them to assist the gunships, and then I just control the gunships and move them around. You do have to be a little bit careful, because you can sometimes, if you're not paying attention, you can send the ASFs into over the top of a bunch of flak, and you lose them all immediately. But
I like to dangle my broadswords out as bait, but
okay.
I try to keep my finger on the trigger as far as getting the ASFs into position at the right time.
Nice. Yeah. A couple of experimentals going down in the middle, a GC from Team 2 and Chicken from Team 1, I'm assuming. Yeah, there's no Seraphim on Team 2. There is another chicken alive, but there's 2 Fat Boys in the middle. A couple of T1 land factories have been built. Hopefully we're going to see some engineers being built. We've already got some being brought forward, trying to absorb some of that mass. There's like 40k mass just in experimental form there in the middle. And that nuke being launched. Where's it going to go? No nuke defense loaded for Sneed. They're sending it in between Swackle and Blastjild's base. Let's take a look. Let's just see if we can get a nice cinematic view of this.
I don't think it's a bad nuke placement, but I think I would have gone deeper and just eliminated Swackle from the game.
Yeah, you've got a big air grid over there, and those take time to set up. If you take out all of someone's T3 P-gens, they basically have to pause everything that they're doing and start again from scratch. So a bunch of T3 mexes for Blastjild taken out, but I agree, not 100% efficiency on that nuke. Megalith charging forwards now.
Great being armchair players, right? Where we can just be like, that was so terrible, whenever we probably wouldn't even have a nuke right now.
Yeah, and we can, we can see everything that's going on. We don't have to worry about microing everything. But that's the fun of casting. You get to pretend that you're better than pro players.
There is nearly 100,000 reclaim in the middle.
Wow.
And it's looking like Blast is starting to make a play for it. I think that Team 2 though could make a more concerted effort going for that though.
Yeah, it looks like all those T1 factories got destroyed actually. I'm not exactly sure what by, but Megalith moving forwards and Fatboy moving forwards as well. Just honestly, my favourite thing about this game, and there's a lot of things to choose from, but my favourite thing is that the reclaim fields that are produced after a battle produce these really nice dynamic objectives. And if you only just win a battle, you're in danger of just dumping a bunch of mass on the enemy's doorstep. So you need to kind of win each skirmish by a decent margin, so you can collect the mass. You can kind of move forward, set up a defensive perimeter, and collect that mass. Megalith going
kind of like Harzer just did there with that Megalith.
Yeah.
throwing it into that fire base.
Yeah, it's almost impossible for Team 2 to reclaim that mass. That's I don't know how much the megalith cost. 30,000 mass, something like that. Definitely didn't get full use out of it. Fat Boy going down. That one is more in Team 2's territory though. A couple of mercies there, I think. Softenlube.
Megalith costs 40k mass, 37.5.
Oh, wow. It's the most expensive land experimental, I think. It might be the most experimental, most expensive non-structure experimental. The T4 artillery and the Paragon are just hyper expensive, but I think the megalith is next on the list.
Oh, this is what's nice about having a codecaster, is I can go pull those numbers.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah, Team 2 just sort of inching forwards that defensive perimeter, hitting a little bit of mobile missile fire, or no, excuse me, there's a bunch of miasmas. It's like 10 or 12 miasmas have already been built there for No Fear. Trying to keep this mass field clean. Most of the mass is out of their reach, so they're saying if we can't have it, no one can. Not a bad idea. Meanwhile, Resinoob collecting that megalith with a few T3 engineers. What's that? I'm hoping that was a support commando. Yeah, looks like Sneed has got a bunch of Sakis.
Team 2 are continuing to widen the gap as far as eco goes.
Mm.
They're almost 100,000 mass up. They're a little over 100,000 mass, I think.
Yeah. It's like a big air engagement brewing over these summit battleships over here. Maybe not. Yeah, that's 100,000 mass. Certainly not insurmountable. But certainly something that Team 1 needs to rectify if they want to keep in the game.
Incidentally, it is the most expensive land, but all of the air experimentals are either equally expensive or more expensive.
Oh, really? Didn't know that. I suppose that makes sense. I think in my head I kind of thought that air experimentals were fairly cheap. They always seem to get deleted by ASFs instantly. So
That's another nuke going out.
Yeah, this time going for Swackle, I think, and he does have a defensive missile. Second one over 50% complete. Again, that's an error that can be easily rectified by scouting, as long as you've got the sort of APM and concentration available to check how many missiles are loaded into that SMD when you fly over it. You can definitely rectify that situation.
You can check how many are loaded.
Can you not?
No.
I see. Maybe it's only in observer mode then. Makes sense.
That's another nuke. This time out from actually Macro Noob.
Yeah, and that sort of concerted effort between the two players.
And we've got No Fear as a nuke of his own in his own base. So that's 3 nukes there. Nice. For team number 1.
Oh, but Swackle, I think, just about completed an SMD of his own, and that Sneed's SMD was empty, but Swackle's saving the day there. I think if Team 1 had scouted, they might have been able to place that nuke a little bit better to keep it out of range of Swackle's SMD. Chicken doing the best it can over in this northern expansion here. It's surrounded by a bunch of Rambo Seraphim commanders. Oh no, UEF commanders, excuse me.
I think that was an optimistic play there with the chicken.
Yeah. Unfortunately, not going to get a ton of damage down with the Ion Storm either. Awasa has been queued up for Team 1. Another chicken rolls off, and Macro Noob starts the Awasa there. And also is actually almost, or well, it's 50% complete there for Resinoob.
Well, I think the term you're looking for is ass washer. It's definitely not an Alisai. It's an ass washer.
Ass washer, fair enough.
I'm from the southern United States. We say ass washer.
Ass washer, I like that. Yeah, I feel like the ass washers, they're the kind of epitome of, they can be used really effectively, but if you put them in harm's way, they will just be completely useless. So they only 52,000 hit points on those. They will get completely deleted by a sufficient horde of ASFs.
I think that's true with all of the air experimentals, although I would say the ass washer is probably the most useful, because I think that the Soul Ripper is honestly one of the most useless experimentals in the game.
Yeah, I
And
agree.
then the Czar is kind of really only good for a suicide bomber. It's just like kind of get it over an enemy commander and
Yeah,
then just drop it on their head.
do like 20k damage with the corpse. Um,
I think in the Bay, you've got several summits now coming
Yeah.
out for Sneed. That
it's building more cruisers, I think, out of that T3 factory. But yeah, summits do a lot of damage. The ass washer going straight for those navy forces. It's gonna get a bomb off. There it goes. Really, really cool looking unit, the ass washer. Oh, it only gets T1 units, I think. Might have got a cruiser or two, but mostly frigates going down. That's certainly not ideal.
well, I think in this particular instance, you want to keep those guys back, or the house washer back a little bit, because I think No Fear has air superiority at this point, pretty severely actually.
Yeah, yeah, and there was just a little bit of chat going on saying, I think it was Zwaffle Noob saying, stop ASF production, we have way more of them. I kind of feel like, though, if you're committing to air experimentals, you want to make sure you keep up ASF numbers. It's a bomb from the ass washer doing absolutely nothing, except frying some fish.
Well, maybe mix it up a little bit, but
You think maybe they should be building some strap bombers or something like that?
well, like keep maybe like one factory or maybe two that are producing ASF, but the rest of them, yeah, just switch over to like restorers or
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah. Those the T3 Aeon gunships are really cool. Like their air-to-air capabilities are really, really strong.
Yeah,
Very
unfortunately, as
expensive
far
to
as gunship capabilities go, they're not the best, but they can actually hold their own against ASFs, which is awesome.
Yeah, I think one of them can take on like 3 or 4 ASFs or something like that. I've given up on the ass washer bombs on those summits. I think unless they get a direct hit onto those navy units, the bomb doesn't actually go off. It just kind of peters out in the ocean. The bomb is going down. Careful with the friendly fire. Yeah, a bunch of those T2 gunships. I think they were going to get the job done, but the bomb comes in and kind of overkills the job.
So the bomb does go off if it hits the water. You just don't have the animation
I
unless
see.
it's directly attacking a unit.
Oh, that's a nice bomb. Takes out 3 or 4 cruisers. Almost kills that battleship.
Swackle dives. Does pick it off. And we have a pretty big air fight going.
Yeah.
Don't think Swackle's going to come out of that one on top.
No, I don't think so. Now that all of those cruisers have gone down, No Fear can safely go in and take on that air engagement.
I think with a cloud of ASF like that, you would want Seraphim cruisers more so than you want UEF cruisers with the AoE and the flak and everything.
Right. Are Siren cruisers, do they have AoE? damage?
No, Cyber and Cruiser. I think Seraphim are the only ones with flak capability. Everything else is SAMs, surface
Right.
layer missiles.
Strategic launch detected.
Another nuke coming out. Let's take a look at how many nukes are loaded. Got one in the tank for No Fear. One's just been launched here from Resi Noob. Let's see where that's going to go. It's going for the the Navy factory, sorry. So they've finally decided to take out that secret Navy base. And a T3 Air Factory Navy Factory HQ represents a pretty significant mass investment. Actually leaves one of those T2 factories alive though. Not the best nuke placement in this game, I have to say.
I think it accomplished the goal that he was looking for because he can't make cruisers just out of the T2 without a T2 HQ.
Oh, of course, you're right. I always forget about that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so just switching up to frigate production now. Bringing in 3 SACUs and a bunch of engineers over there to rectify that situation. I like to think that Navy units are kind of one, compared to like land and air units, Navy units are one sort of tech level above what they appear to be. So a Tech 1 Navy unit has kind of the same capabilities and mass investment that a T2 land unit has. A T3 battleship is kind of a mini experimental almost, so when one of those goes down, it's pretty significant. I think they take about 10,000 mass to produce.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. So there's been a lot of mass investment in that northern pond, and I really don't think that Team 2 has gotten a whole lot out of it, as Resi is just kind of fortified up with those Seraphim T3 heavy shields, which are super strong, strongest T3 shields in the game, and Resi is just kind of fortified the position and then just doesn't really care anymore, and the battleships are really having trouble punching through.
Yeah, and you got to be careful because there's, like I say, 10,000 mass being dumped each time, or maybe it's more like 5,000 mass, but a lot of mass being dumped each time one of those battleships goes down, and it's certainly in the enemy's territory. Although, that said, still a lot of Navy units and SACUs in the area, so I would think that Team 2 could make a play for some of that mass, if they do it right.
Yeah, I definitely think that's an option that's open to them. And Sneed's actually, I believe, loading up a transport in his base to make a play for that with some engineers.
Oh, very nice, yeah. T3 engineers there, really cool. No Fear using the Aeon T3 torpedo bombers, unique to the Aeon faction. Fortunately, they fly over a few cruisers and SAM sites, and then get cleaned up by ASF. So I think, I'm not sure how much damage they did actually.
You have a couple of special treats in Sneed's base as well as in Macro Noob's base.
Oh, look at that. Duke being completed, you're right. Still the Macro Noob. Yeah, same.
Emissary
completed.
Completed and one under construction as well.
Yeah, nice. So we're very much into the T3 RT stage of the game. That nuke being brought over to destroy some of these T3 Navy units. So it's kind of, I understand the decision, because there's not a whole lot to destroy that isn't covered by strategic missile defense on Team 2's side. So it makes sense to go for these Navy units, but I have to be honest, they're not really doing a whole lot. I think Zwaffle Noob was having some troubles early on, but now that he's built shields, he's not troubled too much by those Navy units. I have to feel like that nuke could have been better placed in this sort of frontal fire base here, take out most of that megalith. Maybe even a T3 mechs, some T3 land units as well.
Yeah, I think that as far as nuke placement goes at this point, obviously you'd want to go for the main base, but those are pretty well locked down with SMDs from Harzer as well as
Detected.
Sneed, and I'm pretty sure Blast has his own SMD. But yeah,
Strategic
whenever
launch
you're
detected.
talking, whenever you get to this stage of the game, your nukes are kind of going after fire bases, naval factories, things like that, or used as point defense.
Yeah, nuclear point defense is fantastic. One of my favorite things to see in the game. Really, really cool. But
Terrible at using it.
yeah, really, really
I end
difficult.
up
Yeah.
blowing up all my own units.
Yeah, or just blowing up the dirt. So yeah, one of those nukes does go for that firebase now, and a second nuke being fired on the same spot. I think they came out from different players, so I don't know if that was a deliberate attempt to avoid, the SMDs, or if they both accidentally just went for the same thing. But Megalith goes down, a bunch of point defenses and defensive structures go down there.
Big check in the chat. That was an accident.
Oh, really? Okay.
I think there was a miscommunication there between Macro and No Fear as far as where they're going to put their nukes.
Yeah, makes sense. We've got it's almost 30,000 mass in that megalith wreck, and that is going to go pretty much directly into T3 artillery, I would imagine. A Duke being produced by Swackle there, so I'm lagging a little bit.
Well, if they wanted to double down on that Mega, they could send out the nuke that's about to finish for Resi and destroy all the reclaim as well.
Yeah. That at this stage in the game, that's actually a pretty effective use, to be honest. It gets more and more difficult to take out any significant base structures. So taking out those enormous experimental wrecks can be pretty useful.
I don't think that that's like the best use. That's more of just like an additional fuck you to T2.
Yeah. Attack the mental game.
But Sneeds needs to get some more shield, I think, over his Duke.
Yeah, shields actually go down. He's not power stalling. It is just from the artillery fire from the enemies, isn't it? How many?
Yeah, I believe so. He's up against. I feel like there's another.
Yeah, it looks like there's a couple, I think.
There are two emissaries for Team 1. One is in Resi Noob's base, and then we've got a second and a third is nearly completed in Macro Noob's base.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
Sneed,
Sneeds.
as well as there's an emissary up for Team number 1. I believe that is Blasts. They're both targeting No Fear,
Yeah.
which I think is the wrong move, considering No Fear doesn't have any artillery that is any form of a threat.
Yeah, the only thing they can sort of reliably hit is the air grid. I'm not convinced that air has been a hugely impactful factor in this game at the minute.
I think so. I would argue that it has, because of the Awasa shielded by No Fear's ASF
Yeah,
were
that
able
makes
to
sense.
clear out a lot of the Navy. Although I say that, and the Navy has really kind of bounced back there for Sneed, who
Yeah.
seems convinced that cruisers are going to win the game.
Yeah, and I suppose if Team 2 wants to build a Caesar or something like that, then they do need to take control of the skies.
For the longest time, whenever I watched Guile for a good period of time before I actually started playing the game, which I think a lot of people can share in.
Yeah,
and the way
definitely.
that he says Czar, I thought he was saying za, like pizza.
Right.
And I was like, oh, well, it's circular. That totally makes sense.
Oh, right, I see. Yeah. Zah. How do you pronounce it?
Well, I think I think it might be like the British accent, but it just like, for me, I didn't hear the R at the end. So
Right.
Czar versus za. And
Yeah.
so I was like, oh, it's za. You want some za, bro?
Yeah. Yeah, I quite like that, actually.
That artillery, though, from Blast going down.
Oh, that's painful. That is painful. Sneed keeping his alive. Swackle has just about completed a Duke of his own. There it goes. A lone broadsword from Swackle, defending Sneed's navy forces from encroaching Zuis. Nuclear point defense again there. So going after those summits. Oh, just the one summit actually.
The nuclear point defense. How very American.
Sneed's? Is that actually a control K? Or is that
So
artillery fire?
I was watching his base. He ate an artillery shot to the face.
Oh no! What was his power like? It was
It just, he only had like 3 T3 shields over him.
right,
And there's 3 emissaries on the other side. So
tough to contend with.
emissaries are actually one point where I think the Aeon do pretty well.
Yep. The Aeon T4 artillery, the what's it called, rapid fire cannon?
Salvation.
Oh yeah, that is, I think, maybe my favorite unit in the entire game. It's so cool.
You got a lot of favorite units in the game.
I just love this game, man. It's it's brilliant.
Meanwhile, look at Swaffle Noob's base.
Yeah, it's been completely destroyed. I don't know if that's a combination of the Navy units firing on it plus Sakyu, I think, just got transported in.
Well, you've got 4 galaxies in the bay, so I'm going to go with naval units.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, the first like bit of headway that Team 2 have been able to make into this Fort Knox of a base that Team 1 has built on that plateau.
Yeah, yeah. On the other side, though, Sakyu goes up in smokes, I think because of artillery fire in Swackle's base, and almost takes out the nuke. And a pinpoint artillery shell takes out Swackle's Duke. Starts work on another one, but that's a pretty significant blow.
I think at this point, even though Team 2 is 600,000 mass up, Team 1 have reached critical mass as far as artillery.
Yeah, it's hard to see what Team 2 can really do. They kind of rested on their laurels, I think, a little bit early on, and let Team 1 build the T3 artillery and kind of just fell behind there.
I wouldn't say that they rested on their laurels, but like if you take into account the northern and southern navies, that's probably 500,000 mass that was invested into both navies.
Right, yeah.
And Southern Navy did take out Zwaffle Noob's base, but the Northern Navy really hasn't done a whole lot outside of denying a few mexes.
Yeah, you're right. I do tend to be a little bit harsh, I think, when I cast.
So I wouldn't say that. I think it was poor decision making. But once again, armchair casters. We're not playing the game.
Yeah. Caesar produced there by Blast Shield. Very, very light on HP is the Caesar. 40,000 hit points.
I think casters are... I had a girlfriend in college that was always criticizing the way I was driving.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so she would just sit there and be like, "You're not supposed to do this. You should do this instead. You're not supposed to do that." I feel like that's what casters are.
yeah, definitely. And Hazenoob, I think, going down to T3 RT.
Yeah, that would appear to be a rather fatal blow.
Yeah. A couple of bugs started.
Kind of rough on your tombstone. You know, Parser noob, loving FaF player, ate a T3 artillery shell to the face.
Yeah. Swackle goes up in smokes as well, so just Blast Shield left. I don't know what happened to Swackle. I don't know if that actually was a control K. I don't know if you saw exactly what happened to
I think Swackle gave up.
Yeah. it's pretty demoralizing when you're just facing off against all this T3RT.
Well, you're playing shield building simulator at this point.
Yeah, that's tends to be why I stay away from 4v4 games. I just don't think I have the patience to play a game where it feels like no matter what you do, it's still just a 50-50.
Oh, 4v4 games at our skill level don't end up like this. These guys are probably I think Swackle could probably take on you and me if we joined together as a team and put all 7 of our brain cells on this game. Swackle could probably still hold us upside down and beat us with a baseball bat.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Another nuke coming out. Do we have nuke defense on this side of the base? I don't think so. It looks like Blast Shield. He's not giving up yet. He's putting all of his chips on the Caesar. I think that's the only play he has left, really.
Yeah, rent's due. He's got $3 grand down on this hand.
Yeah.
Strategic launch detected.
There's massive amounts of nukes coming out from Team 1 now. Just going for full nuclear warfare.
Yeah, and they're not even all firing on the same spot. They're scoring all over the
They're
place.
going to one past that Tsar, though.
Yeah, down it goes. Blast Shield defeated there. I'm guessing that was more artillery fire. Quite a nice game, quite a nice sort of back and forth game. I was pretty convinced that Team 2 were going to come out on top there when they took full control of those the 2 ponds. I'm quite surprised that Team 1 were able to defend against it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes down to, I think this game shows that it's not the size of the mass bar that you have, it's how you use it.
Definitely, yeah.
If you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. What do you think? What do you think Team 2 could have done to win that game?
I think that Team 2 overcommitted to the northern pond from a Navy perspective. And it's easy to get into a tunnel vision kind of like that where you're like, I've got this advantage, I have to use it. And I think that Resi did a pretty good job of just being kind of a cockroach and staying alive.
Yeah.
Against kind of the naval attacks. And he got the first nuke out, so I think that Sneed's pressure was a little bit tunnel visioned. Otherwise, I think that Team 2 did pretty well. Some scouting to see the artillery, because it didn't seem like Team 2 reacted quickly enough to the artillery.
Yeah.
I think it would have been good to shell the original emissary that Macronoob built instead of going after No Fear's primary base. But how about you? What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think they spent just an enormous amount of mass trying to control these ponds. I think in a lot of maps, Navy can completely change the game, but I think sometimes players tend to overcommit, and those units are just so expensive, and once they're kind of out of their depth in terms of usefulness, they're just completely useless.
Happens to the best of us. You want to sign us out?
Yeah, cool. Let's do it. So thanks for watching, everyone. This video is going up on my channel, right? So I would say,
yep.
I would say if you haven't checked out Duelist's channel, then definitely do. But I can't possibly believe anyone's not seen your channel who's seen mine yet. But anyway, there we go. Thanks very much, Duelist, for joining me.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
Cool.